During a family road trip, my wife pulled over and told me to get out because I wouldn't apologize for embarrassing her at her boss's party. She shouted, "You're just jealous of my success." I whispered, "You mean the job I helped you get with my pitch?" Minutes passed. Her boss called and said, "The night before, we were in Kansas City, attending Ava's boss's 54th birthday party on a rooftop downtown. Fancy catered food, wine that tastes like money, and a skyline view that screamed tech startup prosperity." Ava was in her element. Dressed in a navy jumpsuit, she spent a full week debating over, hair curled just right, working the room with a grace I rarely see at home. She was magnetic there, laughing, complimenting, making little industry jokes that made me feel like I was listening to a foreign language. I stood at the edge of the crowd for most of the night, nursing a beer, trying to avoid being mistaken for someone's accountant. Then her boss, Clay, asked her about how she originally pitched herself to Brantley Systems, the company she works for now. It was small talk, lighthearted, but my ears perked up. I was curious what she'd say. She laughed and waved her hand like it was nothing. "Oh, I had some help," she said, motioning vaguely in my direction. Clark gave it a polish. A polish, like I'd thrown some wax on a used car. I had practically built that entire deck, slide by slide, stat by stat, at her kitchen table while she hovered over me with a glass of wine. I ran mock interviews with her, coached her on phrasing, even wrote 2 of the 3 core value slides. She didn't even work in strategy at the time. She was freelancing and struggling to find clients. So I said, not loudly, but audibly enough, "Polish?" I created it. The group shifted awkwardly. Clay chuckled and moved the conversation along. Ava shot me a look I hadn't seen in years, sharp, brittle, cold. The kind of look that doesn't end when the party does. The car ride back to the hotel was silent. Celia tried to fill the air with chatter about her upcoming trip to Europe, but no one was really listening. We left the next morning for Colorado, driving west in strained silence. Ava didn't say a word to me from the moment we packed up until she kicked me out of the car 2 hours later. I watched her drive away, dust swirling behind the SUV. My bag sat next to me, small and ridiculous in the vast Kansas nothingness. The highway buzzed in the background. I sat on my suitcase, trying to understand what just happened. My marriage had been cracking for a while, but this felt like a fracture point. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Clark? This is Clay. Clay Hastings." My heart thumped. "I hope this isn't weird, but I got your number from Ava's contact sheet. I overheard part of the conversation last night. About the pitch." I said nothing. I just wanted to say, if you built that presentation, it was good. Really good. Frankly, better than what I've seen from some of our internal team. I thought she outsourced it. I let out a soft laugh. "Nope. Just me. After work. On weekends." "Listen," he continued. "We're going through a bit of a restructure, and we're looking for consulting support on the branding side. I don't want to overstep, but would you be open to talking?" I said yes. I didn't even think about it. He gave me his assistant's number. Told me to call Monday. I hung up, still sitting in the sun, suitcase beneath me, Kansas wind tugging at my sleeves. It was quiet again, but different. Not just lonely, liberating. A long-haul trucker named Lou picked me up an hour later. I didn't tell him the whole story, just enough that he shook his head and muttered, "People forget who helped him get where they are." We drove east, and I got home late that evening. The house was silent. Celia texted me from her mom's phone. "I'm sorry. That was messed up. You okay?" I replied, "Yeah, just tired. Be safe." Bruno must have sensed I was back. He curled up next to me on the couch that night. I didn't talk to Ava for 3 days. When she returned from Colorado with Celia, she didn't mention what happened. No apology. No explanation. Just walked in, dropped her purse on the kitchen counter, and asked if I'd taken the trash out. I didn't respond. We've lived in the same house for 6 months now, existing like ghosts passing through each other's mornings. Coffee brewed separately. Doors closed a little too firmly. But the silence? It's not angry anymore. It's heavy. And beneath it, something else. Maybe regret. Maybe just fatigue. But that phone call from Clay changed more than I expected. He hired me for a 3-month consulting contract. It went well. I picked up another client. Then another. Turns out, I was good at this branding stuff. Really good. I'd always worked in tech, mostly back-end dev work, quietly solving problems while people like Ava took the spotlight. But now, I was finding my own footing. I haven't told her about the clients yet. She probably knows. She's not stupid. But I think she expected me to shrink after that roadside fallout. Instead, I grew. And part of me wonders, maybe that's what she feared most. Sometimes I catch Ava looking at me differently. Less dismissive, more guarded. Not in a way that says she's proud of me, but like she's trying to gauge how much longer she has the upper hand. That dynamic, the power shift, has always been subtle between us. For years, I played the role of the supporting spouse. I earned a steady paycheck, handled the insurance and retirement stuff, made dinner most nights. I was the stable one while she dreamed big, stumbled, pivoted, and eventually soared. I was okay with that. Or at least I thought I was. But things change. I started taking client calls from my home office, the one that used to be a catch-all for holiday decorations and dusty paperwork. Now, it's got a second monitor, a whiteboard with timelines and logo drafts, and a few potted plants I actually remember to water. It sounds ridiculous, but that little space started to feel like mine in a way the rest of the house didn't anymore. Celia noticed, too. She FaceTimes me from Copenhagen, her laptop propped on some cafe table, while she eats pastries and talks about her classes. We laugh more now. She asks questions about my projects, tells me it's cool that I finally found something that excites me. Then she'll pause and say things like, "Mom's always been the loud one. But you're the one who sees the whole board." I don't know if she meant chess or life. Maybe both. Ava's energy shifted gradually. She started staying later at work again, claiming back-to-back meetings and boardroom politics. Her usual long debriefs about office drama got shorter. Sometimes, she'd say something under her breath, about a junior hire undercutting her, or how the new VP was trying to trim department budgets. I didn't bite. I just nodded. Then one evening, she came home unusually quiet, poured herself a glass of wine, and sat at the kitchen island watching me saute mushrooms for dinner. I could feel her eyes on me. "You're really doing this, huh?" she asked finally. "Doing what?" "Becoming your own person again." The wording caught me off guard. Again, I shrugged. I guess I forgot I was allowed to. She didn't say anything after that, just took her wine and went upstairs. Bruno followed her, tail wagging like he was unsure whose side he was on. We'd stopped talking at night. The bed felt wider. Some nights, she stayed up scrolling on her phone with her screen dimmed low, her back to me. Other nights, I was the one retreating to the couch, more out of habit than necessity. We weren't fighting, but we weren't connecting either. Then came the dinner. Clay was in town again and invited me to a small networking event at a new restaurant in the Crossroads. I debated going. It felt weird. Ava still worked under him in some capacity, though not directly anymore since her team got absorbed into another department. But I went. And when I walked into the dim, industrial chic room full of people I barely knew, Clay stood up from his seat at the longwood table and greeted me like I was a damn VIP. He introduced me to half a dozen people as the guy who helped us redefine our internal pitch game. I smiled awkwardly, but I won't lie, it felt good. Then I saw Ava. She was at the other end of the table. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. She hadn't mentioned she'd be there, and clearly, neither had Clay. We didn't speak all night, but I caught her watching me once, just once, when someone I'd helped land a pre-seed round was laughing and clapping me on the back. Her expression was unreadable. Not angry, not proud, just tense, like she was trying to reconcile the version of me in her head with the one standing across the room. That night, when we both got home, separately, and much later, she stood in the kitchen again, wine glass in hand, the way she always does when something's weighing on her. "Didn't know you'd be there," she said without looking up. I wasn't sure I was going until the last minute. She nodded, eyes focused on the swirl of red wine in her glass. "They talk about you now," she said softly. "Who?" "People at work. Clay. The board. Some of the new hires." I leaned against the counter. And she looked up. Her eyes weren't angry this time. They were tired. Almost confused. And I didn't think that would bother me. But it does. There it was. Not jealousy. Not resentment. Something else. A disorientation, maybe. Like someone rearranged the furniture in a room she thought she'd memorized. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say that wouldn't feel like a gloat. We stood there for a long time in silence, the dog sleeping between us on the tile. She broke first. "I miss who we used to be." I exhaled through my nose. "I don't." Her eyes snapped to mine. "I miss who we could have been," I clarified. "But not who we were. That version of us wasn't working." She didn't argue. She just nodded, set her glass in the sink, and walked away. 3 weeks passed without much shift in our dynamic. The house remained neutral ground. Conversation stayed functional, cordial, even, but hollow. Ava and I moved like coworkers sharing a common space, careful not to step on the other's routine. She still made her green smoothie in the morning, still left her coffee mug in the sink half full, still hummed to herself when she filed emails at night. But something in the air had changed. One afternoon, I came back from a meeting at a cafe down the block and found a yellow folder on the dining room table. It had my name on it, in her handwriting. Inside were printed notes from a marketing campaign I vaguely recognized, one of her early projects at Brantley. There were scribbled annotations in the margins. My notes. My phrasing. No note. No explanation. Just acknowledgement. She was saying something without saying it. I left it on the table, untouched, and made dinner in silence. She came home late and saw it still sitting there. Our eyes met for a moment. No one said anything. We didn't have to. The weeks continued like that, quiet flashes of something almost resembling mutual respect. Not warmth, exactly. Just recognition. Ava started asking vague questions about the projects I was taking on. Not invasive, not interested like a partner would be, but not dismissive either. Curious, maybe. Tentatively. I'd tell her about a client that needed help repositioning after a product flop, or a startup whose founders had burned through their seed money trying to do too much too fast. She listened. She didn't interrupt. And sometimes she offered sharp observations I hadn't thought of. It reminded me of when we were younger, brainstorming ideas late at night on the couch while Celia slept upstairs. That was before things got tangled in power plays and quiet sacrifices. I found myself wondering, if we'd had those years all over again, would we have landed here? One Thursday morning, she knocked on my office door. She never knocked. Got a second? She asked, already stepping in. She looked tired. Not exhausted, just worn. Like she'd been staying up late with a mind that wouldn't shut off. I'm supposed to present a revised version of the growth strategy next week, she said. Clay wants a new angle. I've got some ideas, but I'm stuck. I waited. She cleared her throat. Would you take a look? I mean, you've been doing this kind of thing now, and, sure, I said before she could finish. She didn't smile. She just nodded, like the decision cost her something. She emailed me the deck an hour later. It was rough, unfocused, trying too hard to impress. I spent the afternoon editing, not rebuilding it, just reshaping what was already there. Her ideas were sound, just buried under too many buzzwords. I tightened the structure, reworded a few key slides, and suggested a more grounded close. I sent it back to her without comment. The next day, she didn't say anything when she passed me my coffee, but she lingered a little longer at the table. And later that week, after the presentation, she left a note on my desk. Thanks. It went well. You still have it. A few days after that, I got an email from another one of Clay's connections. A larger company. Big project. Longer contract. A real opportunity. I mentioned it at dinner, almost casually. She looked up from her salad. Are you thinking of taking it? I'm leaning toward yes. It'd mean more hours, less flexibility, but it's a step forward. She nodded, chewing slowly. You should, she said after a moment. You've earned it. I wasn't expecting that. The old Ava might have told me to think twice, weigh the trade-offs. This version just supported me. And that was almost harder to process than all the arguments. Celia called that night. She said she could tell from our last video chat that something's different at home. I asked her what she meant. You both sound like you're being polite. Careful. Like co-workers after a fight. I laughed. She wasn't wrong. Is that bad? I asked. Not necessarily, she said. Sometimes that's the only way forward. Start as strangers again. That stuck with me. Because that's exactly what it felt like. Not rebuilding our marriage. Not yet. But starting over. Reintroducing ourselves after years of assumptions and old wounds. And maybe that was the only real chance we had left. 2 nights later, Ava sat across from me at the kitchen table. We'd just finished a silent dinner, the kind where forks scraping plates were the loudest part of the evening. I've been thinking about therapy, she said quietly. I blinked. Okay. Not couples. Just me. For now. I nodded. That's a good idea. She stared at her hands. I need to figure out how much of what I became. I chose. And how much I just drifted into. There was a long pause. The kind that carries a decade of history. Me too, I admitted. She didn't cry. She didn't thank me. She just stood up, rinsed her dish, and left the room. But something shifted that night. Not loudly, not all at once. Like a door opening slowly after being stuck for years. The silence between us finally felt less like a wall and more like a pause. Something waiting to be said. But neither of us was ready yet. Not quite. A few more weeks passed, and the rhythm of our lives continued. Quiet, restrained, but no longer icy. There was a strange comfort in the space that had opened up between us, like we were both learning how to breathe again. Even Bruno, who used to shadow Ava from room to room, had started lingering with me more. Maybe he sensed the shift, too. I threw myself into the new contract. The work was demanding, but it felt good to be needed in a way that wasn't domestic or invisible. My ideas were taken seriously. My voice mattered. The team I was consulting with asked for my opinion on everything, from branding tone to internal morale strategies, and not just to be polite. Meanwhile, Ava came and went on her own schedule. Her hours were longer now, but she wasn't wearing that tense, performative armor all the time anymore. There was less edge in her voice, less need to control the air in every room she walked into. One Friday afternoon, I came downstairs to find her in the living room, laptop open, notebooks scattered across the coffee table. She was in sweats, barefoot, her hair up in a messy knot. It reminded me of the early days, before all the pressure, before the split paths. She looked up when I passed. Hey, she said neutral. Hey, I replied. I poured myself a glass of water and hesitated for a moment, then walked back and sat on the far end of the couch. What are you working on? She exhaled. Trying to rewrite the rollout strategy for a new product. The dev team is behind and marketing doesn't want to delay. So I'm stuck in the middle trying to finesse the timeline without lighting everything on fire. I nodded. Want another set of eyes on it? She paused, surprised. Yeah, actually, that would be great. So I did. For 3 hours. No arguing. No territory wars. Just 2 professionals working side by side. offering feedback, bouncing ideas, occasionally passing the dog between us when he whined for attention. It was strange and nice. When we wrapped up, Ava leaned back and stretched. "You're really good at this, you know." I gave her a half smile. Took me long enough to figure it out. She laughed, a real one, the kind I hadn't heard from her in months. And for a second, it was almost like we remembered what it was like to be on the same team. The next morning, I was in the kitchen making pancakes, my Saturday tradition. When she came in, robe wrapped around her, hair still damp from the shower. She looked rested, soft. She poured herself coffee and sat at the table. "I signed up for therapy," she said after a long sip. "Good," I replied. She nodded. "I start Tuesday. With someone new. Not the same one we saw before." I didn't ask why. I didn't need to. The old therapist focused too much on us, not enough on her. This time, she was going in alone, on her own terms. "I've been thinking a lot," she continued, "about how things got to where they did. Not just between us, but in me. Somewhere along the way, I started measuring myself by other people's validation. I chased it so hard, I didn't even notice what I left behind." I stayed quiet. "I know I made you feel small," she added. That one hit different. She'd never said it outright. I could feel it every time she downplayed me, every time she brushed off my help, every time she stood taller by pushing me down. But hearing her name it, it mattered. "I didn't mean to," she said. "I know," I replied. "But it still happened." She nodded slowly. And that was it. No tears. No dramatic music. Just a small moment of honesty sitting between us like a folded napkin on the table. In the evenings, we started cooking together again. Not every night, and not always smoothly, but enough that we didn't feel like strangers. Some nights, we didn't talk about work at all. We'd watch old shows we'd half forgotten, or just sit on the porch with our drinks and watch the sun drop behind the fence line. There was a night when the air smelled like rain, and Ava said quietly, "I miss who I was before I had something to prove." And I said, "I miss who you were when you didn't feel like you had to prove anything to me." We didn't say anything else after that, but we both knew it was the closest we'd gotten to the truth in a long time. Around that time, Celia sent us a care package from Denmark. Inside were postcards, some local chocolates, a goofy fridge magnet of a Viking, and 2 handwritten notes. One to me, one to Ava. Mine said, "Dad, I'm proud of you. You're finally showing the world what I always saw. Keep going." Ava's must have been similar. She folded it slowly, tucked it into a drawer. Didn't say much. But that night, she leaned over and rested her head on my shoulder while we sat on the couch. We didn't move for a long time. And for the first time in months, maybe years, I didn't feel alone in the house. I didn't know what it meant yet, what it would become, whether we were healing or simply finding a calmer way to separate. But I knew this, something was opening up. Not everything broken has to be thrown away. Some things just need time, honesty, and a little space to breathe. The strange calm between us lasted another couple of months. The polite détente, the emotional Switzerland of our household, began to wear thin, at least for me. It's not that I was expecting a fairy tale resolution. I'd long since stopped believing that was in the cards for Ava and me. But I started noticing something new, something unsettling. Ava wasn't just trying to repair things between us. She was trying to re-establish control. It started subtly. Comments about how busy I must be now that I was in demand. Little digs about how lucky I was to have connections, to get my consulting gigs. She called it teasing, but there was something in her tone that made my neck stiffen every time. Then she began dropping hints, casual mentions to mutual friends, former co-workers, even Celia, that we were finding our way back, that we were reconnecting. We weren't. We hadn't touched each other in months, hadn't had a single conversation about rebuilding the relationship. All we'd done was stop actively hurting each other. But to Ava, that was progress. And progress meant leverage. And then, the real kicker came. One day, she left her email open on the shared family laptop, something she never did. I wasn't snooping, I swear. I was pulling up a tax document and saw a thread sitting open at the top of the screen. The subject line? Clark's consulting work, a caution flag. It was an email to a senior partner at a company I'd recently pitched for a branding project. Ava had sent a concerned note suggesting they conduct due diligence on me because his past work in corporate environments lacked long-term strategic impact. My stomach dropped. It was subtle, worded carefully. She didn't trash me directly, but she raised just enough doubt. Planted the idea that maybe I wasn't quite the professional they thought I was. Ava had tried to sabotage me. And for what? Ego? Spite? Insecurity? Whatever the reason, I saw everything clearly in that moment. She wasn't trying to rebuild anything. She was trying to keep me in orbit around her, beneath her, where I had always been. But this time, I wasn't staying there. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I needed a plan, something thoughtful, clean, and final. I reached out to Clay. We'd been in casual contact since the networking event, and he'd connected me to a handful of clients already. But I'd never leveraged what I really knew about Ava's work behind the scenes. So I offered him a private meeting. Told him I had some insights that might benefit the company, if he was open to hearing them. We met at a small cafe in Brookside. He brought his tablet. I brought the receipts. Slide decks, shared drafts, side-by-side comparisons of original strategies I had contributed to, some of which Ava had passed off as her own for internal campaigns. I didn't trash her. I didn't call her a fraud. I simply laid out what I had contributed and what she had presented without credit. Clay sat there, stone-faced, said nothing at first. Then he leaned back, crossed his arms, and asked, "Why now?" "Because I found out she tried to derail one of my contracts," I said. "And I'm done pretending I didn't help build her career." He nodded. Didn't push. 2 weeks later, Clay invited me to a closed-door strategy summit. Just a handful of consultants and senior leads. I assumed Ava would be there, but she wasn't. In fact, no one had seen much of her since that week. I found out later she'd been moved laterally. Not fired. Not demoted, officially. But her responsibilities were reduced. Her team reassigned. Her input filtered through middle managers who no longer treated her like a rising star. She was furious. She came home one night, slammed the fridge door shut, and said flatly, "I hope you're happy." I looked up from the couch. "I'm not happy. I'm just not invisible anymore." She didn't respond. Just walked out. One of the startups I'd worked with had grown fast, Series B funding, expanding fast, trying to build a real executive team. They offered me a full-time leadership role, chief brand strategist. Competitive salary, full benefits, stock options. But there was a catch. The role was in Austin. When I told Ava, she froze. "You'd leave? Move?" "Yes." "And what about us?" I shrugged. "You had months to ask that question. You didn't." For the first time in our long, tangled relationship, I saw panic in her eyes. Real, raw panic. Not because she loved me, not in the way love is supposed to feel, but because the thing she always counted on, the part of her life that stayed steady while she rose and fell, was walking away. She didn't beg. She didn't make a scene. She just went quiet. I accepted the offer. A few weeks later, I packed a small U-Haul and Bruno jumped into the passenger seat like he knew this was the start of something different. Celia flew in to help me settle. We stayed up the first night drinking cheap wine on the floor of my new apartment, surrounded by boxes and the soft hum of Austin traffic in the distance. She leaned her head on my shoulder and said, "You look lighter." I felt it too. Lighter. Clearer. Free. I didn't block Ava. I didn't ghost her. I left the door open, figuratively speaking. We still talk about logistics. House sale, taxes, shared accounts. She even tried to slip in a few personal updates now and then, but I never took the bait. My silence said more than any speech ever could. And when I got the official notice that the company Ava once ruled with her polished smile and curated brand had appointed a younger, fresher strategist to take over her division, someone she used to refer to as junior talent, I didn't celebrate. I didn't have to. The universe had delivered my justice. And I was already gone.